Coming up on the Health Feast.
Can you talk about that? Like, sort of how to be more consistent in your practice?
So the mantra that I have for myself, and this is just what works for me, and I've recommended to tens of thousands of students around the world, is this mantra called RPM. RPM, rise, P, meditate. First things first. Because I tell you, once that turmoil, once that hurricane lands in your house, which is usually when you open up your phone, check your messages, or the kids wake up, they've entered into your bedroom, whatever that is, the hurricane's already in. The cloud is already up. It's very, very hard at that point to fight that momentum and say, now I'm going to sit and meditate in the middle of the day or some other time. Right? So first things first, nothing is more important and nothing can come before that, where you choose to make yourself a priority. Taking the time to sit in silence, whether you like a guided meditation or just like to reflect on your own, make time for yourself. Because if you don't, life has a way of consuming you without you even knowing it. You'll just be taken down that rabbit hole and be spitted out, and you'll be sitting there in your hospital bed looking up at the ceiling and saying, what was the last 70, 90, 50, 20, whatever the years is. So take time to ask yourself this question: who am I and why am I here?
Hey, Po.
What's up, Dr. Rak? Good morning.
I'm always laughing. I am doing great. Welcome back, everyone, to the Health Feast. The Health Feast, where we're going to help you take control of your health as we help ourselves.
Happy New Year.
Happy 2023. Although this is the second episode of the new year for us, because we're releasing them a week behind. So I don't know if we should have said Happy New Year when we were recording last week. That's okay. Happy New Year on January 8th or 9th or whenever this is coming out. Today's a special episode. It's our 5th episode, and we have our first guest.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited, but I'm a little nervous too, because we've never actually had a guest. So this is going to be interesting how this is going to all play out.
That's right. Yeah. We've never had a guest. I'll introduce our guest in a moment, but why don't we do a quick check-in? He's going to be joining us shortly.
Okay.
You want to go first, Po? In this January of 2023, how is your mind, your body, and your spirit?
Busy-minded, because I got to get all that done today before I go back to work. So I have a busy mind. Body feels good. It was nice kind of getting a little bit of more walks in this last week. And then also it's kind of cool because we're linked up on our Apple Watches, so I can also see what you're doing too. So it's kind of a nice motivator. Right. And then my spirit, today, I think I'm just overwhelmed with what I have to accomplish with this condo, and it's kind of causing my spirit to be kind of uneasy a little bit, because I'm kind of like, there's a lot that has to get done. But that's my check-in for today. Just a little busy-minded, and I feel like my spirit's a little uneasy with what's going on with the condo. But I'm here and present, and looking forward to talking to our guest.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Po. Mind is busy. Mind likes to think. I think that's one of our topics we'll talk about with our guest Jay today. I'll do a check-in first before I introduce him, though. My mind, it's been focused since yesterday or last night on this. I kind of do that. Like I tend to, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I tend to go through life like, what's the next kind of big thing that I have to focus on? And I don't generally think much past that.
Wow, that's awesome.
Is that a good thing? I do think past it. That's not true. Like I do worry about things in the future, but I tend to like even like mentally prepare, like, oh, if I know I'm going to do something like with this interview today, then we went and saw my in-laws yesterday for lunch. And after that lunch, like when we were driving home, this was just on the top of my mind. And then last night, I mean, I was doing stuff with my family and things like that, but when I wasn't, I was just sort of thinking about this. So
I think that's
here,
pretty cool. Yeah, I
go
think that's
ahead.
pretty cool. I have a tough time. Like, yeah, I don't know if that's partly the challenge for me is to. I've been there before where I'm totally laser like focused on something where I need to get it done. But like, man, I don't know if lately it's just been. I think I have a lot of things. How do you manage that? How do
Hmm.
you? I think that's a good quality. I mean,
Hmm.
be able to focus on something like what's the next project you got to focus on. I think it sounds like something that you
Yeah.
do.
I don't know. Maybe it comes from like maybe it comes from some practice.
Mm,
Not that I get distracted and I get caught up in my own thoughts. I guess it happens less, or I recognize when it's happening more, and
right.
then you can kind of, I mean, that's what meditation is. I guess Jay will talk more about that with us. It's just a practice. And let's see. Oh, which I was talking to my brother. My brother has been listening to our podcast, by the way, which that really made me happy. And so we caught up over this holiday, and he said something interesting because he also has a meditation practice that he's done in the past, and I'm not I'm not entirely sure what his practice is right now, but he said, "Oh, a lot of people, that word doesn't even mean anything to them. Like they don't know what it means." So I said, "Oh, well, perfect. We're gonna have a meditation teacher on next week."
I
So
honestly, I think that's that. Yeah, I think that's awesome that we were able to do this. To be honest,
yeah.
today, because
Body. I'll just be quick. Body's feeling good. I'm training Poe. I'm training for a longer Spartan race that I want to do in June. So it's a longer race in Monterey and more obstacles, longer distance, kind of on a trail. So, and I did this race in 2018, and when I did it, I just like I got the worst calf cramps like multiple times. I like hobbled through the
oh
entire
my
course.
gosh,
It was excruciating. I was just very I was undertrained,
mm,
underprepared. And so if I'm going to do it again, like I don't want to experience that again. Not knowing what I know, like I have to either decide, okay, I'm going to do this. That means I have to like really prepare. So I went online and I found a, a Spartan trainer. There's like this first certification that Spartan trainers can get called SGX. And I typed in virtual SGX trainer and I found this guy. His name is Keith Stockwell. He is just the most incredible person. It's incredible value for his services. He had a call with me last week where we went through my whole like athletic history, which I'm
wow.
like, I'm not really an athlete. That makes me laugh, but it's not a very long history, right? It's the last 5 years. So I told him about the cramps, everything,
Yeah.
and I'm doing his training program, not for like my strength training, but for his like runs. He has me doing 2 runs a week right now, at different levels of exertion. So this is something I was learning about, was rate of perceived exertion, RPE. Anyway, we can talk about that some other time. I want to, and Spirit is really good. I'm excited about our guest today. We have a few minutes before he's going to join us. So Chodagam, Jay Chodagam. I met Jay at a conference that I went to, a 1-day conference in San Francisco on gratitude in the workplace. This was back in 2017, I believe. And I just was walking in one of the breaks and we locked eyes. And I don't know, we joked if it's because we're both Indian, but there were other Indian people there. So it wasn't just that. I mean, sometimes I think, like I say, Poe, the universe put us together, connected us. I feel some way that Jay, I connected with him in that moment. We started talking, And then I learned that Jay was the I guess monk in residence at a local temple in San Francisco, that he had been in residence there for quite some years. And Jay's story is very interesting. Jay actually originally went to school to become a petroleum engineer, and he was in graduate school at like the top program in the world at UT Austin for this, and is from India. And on a trip home during a break, I'm sure he'll talk about this, he sort of experienced meditation, and that completely changed his life. He came back to school and started incorporating more meditation in his day-to-day life, but also sharing it with others. And then to the point where then he went and stayed in an ashram, in a kind of a religious temple, where he became a monk, which I'm sure he'll talk about. We were just talking before we started recording about his he has a TEDx talk. We'll put the link to that in the show notes. It's a really illuminating talk. And for me, Jay has been, I would say, like a spiritual teacher in my own life. I was privileged and blessed, not last year, but the year before, to go attend one of his meditation retreats north of the Bay Area. And that was a 3-day retreat over like the 4th of July weekend. But I tell you, Po, I got so much clarity, kind of what I wanted in my life and the direction I wanted to move in. I mean, a lot of the decisions I've made in the last year or two have been really profoundly influenced by that experience. I can tie the insights that I had that weekend, where we were doing like, several hours of group meditation every day, but there was also a lot of sort of conversing. There were these wonderful, amazing people, and all that stillness and being in nature. And anyway, it's beautiful. Jay and I recently connected again. I hadn't talked to him since that retreat, interestingly, but he found out about this podcast because I had put a post on LinkedIn. and that resonated with him. He said, you and I, we really need to catch up. And so we had a phone call last week, and then I said, you have to come on this show, and I would be so honored if you are our inaugural guest of the Health Feast. And so any minute now
he's gonna be on. Okay,
he's gonna be on. Yeah, I don't see him in the lobby yet, but
well, before he gets on, I wanna congratulate you for taking on the extended Spartan race. As soon as you said that, I was thinking, man, that's pretty cool. That you're able to. I'm excited for you. I mean, I think that's something that's sort of, that's like the fact that you're challenging yourself kind of makes me want to like start stepping up my game. Like, man, where do I need to step up my game?
Are you going to do Spartan Stadium race in December?
You know what? We talked about it. We kind of brushed over it a couple episodes ago.
You said I could see myself. You said I could see myself doing that. That would be a good goal.
Yes, I think that I need some type of goal. And I think I just gotta figure out where I need to be, like some type of group or someone that, people like you kind of went out and sought out someone that's going to help train you and coach you. I think that's something I need to do too. But anyways, to get back to you, I think that's awesome that you're, taking on I'm excited for you. I want to give you like a little air fist bump. There we go. Boom.
That's it. And Jay is in the lobby. Okay. We'll talk about that some other time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So without further ado, I want to welcome our esteemed guest, Jay Chodagam.
Hello.
Hi, Jay.
Hi. Hi, Po.
How you doing, Jay? Nice to meet you.
Likewise. Nice to meet you. I heard about you. It's good to see you. At least put the face to the name.
I just want to say before we move on that like your voice is like, I feel like I'm in a meditation talking to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You have that sort of ease voice,
Yeah. So, it's a funny story. I was at the Hilton Hotel in downtown San Francisco at the Union Square. And I was at the lobby checking in to register for a conference which had about 2,500 people in it. And
Wow.
this is a conference that had been going for 12 years. So I walk upstairs, take the escalator, reach that registration area, and then I run into a friend who's, I've been going for 12 years, so I have a few friends there. So I run into this guy and we start talking, my face towards the registration booth. And I'm talking for 3 minutes, and a lady from the back, he says, "Hey, are you Jay?" I said, "Yeah." And have you met? She says, "You put me to sleep every single day." And it was incredible. We've never met.
Wow.
She's been listening to my online
Wow.
meditations on a mobile app, and she recognized my voice. And apparently she uses my sleep. I've got 150 meditations out there, but she uses my sleep meditation every single day to put her to sleep. So
Wow.
yes,
Wow.
there's a gift there.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe a certain frequency in your tone that it's instant. Like I can hear it over, like when I'm talking to you right now. Like I said, it's like a meditation conversation, so to speak.
Yeah. So, Dr. Rak,
So,
what are we doing?
Jay, I was just sharing the story of how I met you, how we locked eyes at that Gratitude in the Workplace conference, and how then I have had all these series of moments in my life over the last 4 years where I haven't had like constant contact with you, but you keep coming into my life. It's like the universe keeps bringing us together in different ways for different purpose, for some purpose that now is like unfolding in before my eyes, before our eyes. And when you reached out last week, I was telling Po you saw that on LinkedIn that I had posted about this podcast. And there was something about that where you said, we need to speak. That's all he wrote in the comments under,
Right.
we need to catch up, period.
Right. Yeah.
And then we
No.
texted. And that's something I hope we can talk about today. So
Mhm.
welcome, Jay. Jay, I wanted you to just maybe share a little bit about how you got to this point in your life. It's, I think, a very interesting story and speaks to how life can change and sort of end up in ways that we never expected.
Wow, that's a perfect question in terms of the lead up to my story. It's I never expected, not in the wildest dreams. And I tell you, before I get into that, I'll just tell you this. So there was a period I was a monk for 18 years, right? And so when I was a monk, I was really detached from family, childhood friends, relatives. And then when I would go to gatherings, so I'd go back to India to visit the family, and then we'd have gatherings in which friends and classmates and people show up. And there would be times I've seen that my classmates would walk around me and go to my parents, go to my mother, and say, "How did this guy become like this?"
Wow.
I mean, the kind of person that we knew growing up, the most extrovert, the most, mischievous, playful at all times, but that's the nature of how, when you find that calling, when there's something that kind of rings that bell, you cannot avoid it. You cannot. I mean, you can. I mean, you try to look away. You try to distract yourself. You try to forget about it, that it even happened. But then it keeps knocking. It keeps like a. I almost say that it's like it haunts you. Your purpose haunts you. It never lets you just be. And then when when something is haunting you, it's something that you have to listen to. And when you listen to it and you take action on it, you yield to that advice that you're getting from this download, I call it. The doors begin to open. And fast forward today, when I meet my relatives, my classmates, my childhood friends, they'll tell me that, Jay, this is what you were meant to be doing. You were born for this. And it wasn't easy. And so the two questions I remember, the very first time I walked into a meditation center, they were asking this. asking one to sit with these two questions in silence. Who am I? And what am I here to do on this earth? Right? And if you think about it, that in itself is a introduction to spirituality. Because, you and I, Dr. Rak, I don't know much about Poe's background, but I know Rak is a doctor, I'm an engineer, and in the Indian culture, and so is most of Asian cultures, there's a pressure, that if you want to be somebody, you want to be a doctor or an engineer. Nowadays, it's a lawyer or you'll be a failure, right? So I didn't want to be a failure, so I became an engineer, but I was never meant to be that. Then, so when I was sat with this question of who am I and what am I truly here for, I gave up my engineering. I decided this is my thing. I went down this rabbit hole, and here we are, 10 years into full-time practice and teaching of meditation, 20 years as a meditator personally practicing, and 18 years as a monk. And that's the thing, because you see, the sciences and the universities of the world will keep asking this question: how does the world work? Right? We think about essentially, we're taught to ask this question about how do things work. But what spirituality has taught me is, why are we here? What's ours to do? What's ours to do that nobody else can do, and we cannot not do. So yeah, that's the highlights of my story.
Wow.
Amazing. And Poe, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's it's very powerful. That's very powerful. It really resonates with me because, so I work in I should say corrections. That's the field of that I work in now, and it's a very sort of like a very hostile environment. And I'm someone who doesn't really have that much experience in meditation. I've recently learned, I just say a little taste of what meditation can do. But to hear you say that you walked away from a profession that was sort of bestowed upon you regarding your cultural, background and your traditions and stuff, and then for you to just say, it's not for me, I think that's just a powerful thing, because I often feel challenged with the same, feelings of like, man, could one literally walk away from something where they've built and sustained a lifestyle, and then just walk away? And just hearing you say that you've done that, and like in engineering, that's a status driven, there's a title with that, you say to somebody you're an engineer, it's like, oh wow, but you said you didn't do that. You chose to go a different path. I mean, I think that's just just right there. I just want to listen, I want to continue listening and find out, how you said that it haunts you, and that it always, like, the universe will somehow figure out a way to teach you maybe that's not what you should be doing. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Like, was it very like in your face, or was it very subtle?
Right. Like, yeah. It's a form of suffering, Poe. The best way I can describe it is a form of suffering. It's a suffering in which you're out there doing your thing, right? So as an engineer, I was making more money than I could have imagined. I was making more money than my father, my grandfather, all of them put together, right? And at the beginning of my career, and I'm talking about them at the end of their careers. So it was materialistically very rewarding, but it's like, when the stomach is full, but the soul is hungry. Okay, and I'm saying these are sort of very esoteric terms where it takes a certain amount of awakening to even understand what I'm talking about. But I'll just put it simply: there's a form of suffering when you don't live in alignment with your purpose, right? So this is where that emptiness so really that's the thing. So I was a national champion sailor. So now going back a little bit further beyond my education. So I grew up sailing, and then I competed. I was very, very competitive and won the nationals when I was a junior in college. And so I was a top sailor in India. Then I went to one of the number one university program of what I was studying, and I was getting a master's in petroleum engineering after getting an undergrad in chemical engineering. And my first summer, I got an internship in my dream company. So I was checking off boxes even before I got to 23. But there was that lack of, this is my, my source of happiness. I didn't have that. I didn't find that with people who I'm surrounded by. Right. And I said, I look at the so-called successful people around me. I looked at their lives and I said, okay, 20, 30 years later, I'll be the director, I'll be the vice president, I'll be like them, the CEO of the company. I didn't want that. I didn't want to be there. And I didn't want to spend 30 years going down a path and then realizing that I was up climbing the wrong tree the whole time. And so then I said, what is the answer? And sometimes there is a saying in India that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Right? And sometimes sitting with the right questions is more important than actually finding the answers. So that's really if I answered your question, that was my journey. And then as you sit with the question, then you hear that voice that you were talking about, that haunting thing. You hear that more and more. And then, like I said, then you take an action on it, boom, doors open. You talk about it to people, boom, people say, oh my God, we were thinking that, Jay, you would be amazing at doing something like this. And I think this is the right thing for you. Like the other day, Rak and I were talking about some project. By the way, I'm getting ready to make another pivot in my life. And you were talking about how status and, your sense of security and, your livelihood is based on that. Now I'm ready to pivot into yet another, the third chapter of my professional life. And we'll talk about that. I don't want to derail from this conversation, but the point is that there is a faith that you begin to develop in yourself when you take these chances based on these epiphanies or these downloads, as I call it. You know what I mean? So then that the core is powerful. You, the being, are powerful. All of the externalities, which is your title, your conditions, your position, the colleagues or the company, the startup, so I walked away from $1 million. I mean, the story, but of stock options. And that required me to stay in that job for 4 more years. And I'm like, I'm not going to spend if I equate my life 4 years, it's worth much more than $1 million to me. You see? So, but the thing is, that's where happiness, and that's where you start. When you live with your purpose, you become an inspiration for kids, young people, old people, all kinds of people, because people are looking for a real life example, not the people who just talk on social media, but who are walking the talk.
Wow.
Agreed.
Oh my gosh.
chills.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I can feel it in the way you tell the story that it's a real, like it's become part of who you are now, What I wanted to ask was, did you ever get any pushback from relatives, significant others?
I was wondering the same exact thing.
Like
being Indian, I can only imagine what the aunties were saying.
Right. No, I'll tell you a story. So, so you both of you, obviously, in all cultures, I think that, when you work towards, when you put in 18 years of education and you get to that pinnacle, and then, you go find a job at a top technology company, blue chip stock, and then you go write 2 books while you're at that company and make a name for yourself. I could have retired at this tech company. Right. And then I'm having this pivot in my life. I'm having this calling to go change my trajectory. And I'll tell you a story about how, yes, there is the pressure, but I want to tell you a story of how, like I said, when you follow that voice, that calling, you sit with it long enough, and then you decide to make steps in that direction. I mentioned to you about doors opening. Here's a door opening, great story. So my father, who's since passed, he's a typical Indian dad. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like they talk about in the news in the world, they will talk about, in the car that I drive, they'll talk about, the politics and this and that. But when I talk about, my heart is saying, they'll give the phone to my mother immediately. So you can understand that. So when I had this epiphany, this realization that I wanted to change the trajectory of my professional life, I said I need to take the blessings of my parents, because they go through a lot of sacrifices, they put a lot of effort, they personally have made sacrifices for your success. That's just how our families work. That's right. And then the kid goes and, there's people who fall off along the way, but then this kid goes and actually walks that path, reaches the summit, and then he decides to jump off one day. So I said, no, that's not fair. I need to go and, consult with them. I need to share with them this idea and see what they have to say. So I made a phone call. I was here in the States, mom and dad in India. So I called them, and in the usual stuff, dad asked me, how's your, this and that life going? So fine.
Yeah.
And then I said, let me talk to mom. I have something to say, because I knew he wouldn't have much to talk about my spiritual journey and so on. Mm-hmm. So I talked to mom, and then so I tell her what I had this epiphany. I woke up this morning. I very vividly remember it was the 22nd of January, 2012, exactly 10 years ago, or close to 11 years at this point. And I'm saying that I want to walk away from this career, the stock options, all the stuff I was just talking about, because I feel like I've been put on this earth to do something different. And so my dad actually takes the phone from my mother, and he says this. He says, listen, I've been watching you since you were a kid, and I've seen the kids that you were surrounded by, your cousins, your classmates, your neighbors. Now, fast forward, I look at them, I look at you. Everybody's out looking for themselves. How much can I get? How much can I get more of it? And here you are looking the other direction and saying, what can I do for others? Mm. I just want you to know I could not be more proud of you. Mm. Po, at that moment, I saw a light in the sky that I had never imagined that I was going to see that. That was like the biggest green light on my path. Like, see, so what I'm saying? I did not expect this coming from them. A, for the societal reasons you guys just talked about. And B, I could expect it somewhat from my mother, but not from my dad. But this is what happens when you go follow your calling. There's a resonance. People get it. And the most unexpected of places, you will hear a validation. And I'm not saying 100% people will agree with it. There were some naysayers as well. Mm-hmm. But you got to pick your people. You have to pick your tribe who understands you, who gets what you're here to, who you are and what you're here to do. Right? Even now, as I'm making my second shift, there's 20% of the people I love and I trust. They're like, no, that's not your thing. But again, you sit with yourself and say, if I don't do it, how would I feel 10, 20 years later? There's that guilt, there's regret. This is the time that I had. I couldn't have done it at any other time. And so now's the time for me to do it. If I don't do it, I will die with that guilt. I'll die with that song in my heart. You know what I mean? So it's our job to find a way to voice that song.
It almost sounds like to me that your dad was sort of like a lighthouse in a storm, where when as soon as he said that he understood what you wanted to do, you kind of was like taken back by it and just kind of like, how did that feel when you hear someone like your dad who, sacrificed for you and somewhat I'm a father. I know Dr. Rock, I'm not sure if Jay, if you had any kids, but like we all want the best for our kids. We want them to succeed in whatever matter that they succeed in. But like you said, when he realized that you said you want to do something for others, it resonated with him, huh?
Yeah. And, and this, so you talk about, so there's two things to your question. The first thing is you must have heard the famous John Lennon quote where his teacher asked him, I think when he was 5th grade, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up in life? And he said, I want to be happy And so she failed him in that class.
Hmm.
But he said that he succeeded in life. You can fail me in a class, but you can't hold back my success. Because at that young age, that kid knew what was more important, right? So I ask that you, when you frame the question, parents want to see their children succeed in life. I ask that you to rephrase that and see if you can say, how can I see my child thrive or be happy? You know what I mean?
Got it. Yes.
Yeah. How can I see my child be whole?
Hmm.
You know, especially at a time like right now, as you all might have heard, the pressures on the kid because of social media, and now this whole fentanyl epidemic that's going on, that's just ravaging schools and youth. It's so important that they find that calling. And you know, so this morning I was listening to a podcast. I was in the gym, and I was listening to that whole idea of initiation. You know, how there were traditions all around the world, all the ancient cultures had a way of initiating their youth. You know, what they call rites of passage,
Right.
right? So it was a time when the young person would understand what were their value systems, what was important to them. Why is humility important? Why is teamwork important? Why is interdependence important? That's what these rites of passage always teach, right? It's not just your ego and your gut. It's not like your sheer strength or your intelligence or whatever it is. It's not any one thing. It's not because you're too cool or you're too beautiful looking or tall or athletic or any of that. It's about how do we take that and combine it with the gifts of others around us, and so that we can be in service. And this is one of the things, by the way, that I think over the years that I've learned, that when I'm in service, how can I serve? That's a much more important question than what can I do?
Wow. I have a question to that. So let's say, so I'll speak from my own life. So in my career, right, I feel like it's a service, right? Being in corrections, we're doing a service, we're doing a public service. What does one do if the service is compromising one's health? Right?
That's a
You
great
know, like
question.
it, like if the career choice that I've chosen, even though I believe it is a greater good, that one is serving the society as a whole, but it's slowly, killing the spirit. How does one deal with that?
Yeah, that's a great thing.
Or
I think I really feel that you're asking something that is such a fundamental barometer to life. Is that when you sit down at the end of the day and you look back, have you come fulfilled for what the service you've done? And truly, is that work that you're doing, is it with the intention to serve, or is it a means to an end? You know, so you can say, so, there are people who, in all kinds of fields, like, politicians, right? So you could run for office, you could run for president of the United States with the intention to truly serve, or to fan your own flame of your ego, or make money, or steer the country in a direction that you think needs to be, where it needs to go. So you can have any kinds of, there's a multiple set of myriad of options or intentions with which you're going. So you have to truly ask yourself, why am I here doing what I'm doing? Right, so I have this gift. You and I talked about my voice is, my students say this, that one of my gifts is to listen, and the second one is to heal. Right, so I can take these two things and I can apply it in a number of different ways. But then it's important that that way that in which I'm applying that is fulfilling to me. So I need to feel better about it. So I can lend this voice to, let's say, some sort of a Shopify, that late night, those things, those advertisements that you see on TV that they're trying to sell stuff. So I can lend this voice, and probably people will feel very soothed and calmed, and then probably buy the stuff. But is that going to fulfill me, right?
Got it. Right.
I can say I can try to spin it as, I'm doing service, but is it really service that's aligned with my purpose? Right. So you got to ask yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to go back to your story in the monk that you spent 18 years as a monk. Walk us through how that happens. Like, how does one decide? I mean, granted, I don't know if that's traditionally part of Indian culture. Like, that's an option. Okay. Yeah. So I was like, how did you come to decide? Like, okay, I'm gonna go do this. Like, was it another one of those silent moments, or when you asked yourself, like, okay, this is where I think I need to go down this path so that I can, further my purpose.
Yeah. So it's a progression, Paul. That's the simplest way I can say it. It was, I put one step in front of the other. I was like, I didn't know the journey. I didn't know the destination. I was just putting one step every single day in front of the other, and I was saying, does this feel right? Yes.
Yeah.
Then put another step. So the way the story started was, like I mentioned to you, that I had this, I was at the top of my life at 23. And then I was saying I'm not satisfied. So destiny had me visit my family in India. I would go visit every Christmas. And I came across, remember I told you that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So the teacher appeared in the form of my childhood friend, a classmate of mine, who was doing his PhD in psychology, and his thesis was on meditation. And he had just won the Best Young Scientist of India gold medal from the President of India. Smart kid, super smart kid, a kid who was very close to me, so I knew him quite well. And then he started meditating. I'm like, what on earth? I mean, this guy was listening to heavy metal music with me till last year, and now what? What is this meditation thing? But because I knew he was an intelligent kid, I said, something had obviously struck a chord with him. But hey, that's your thing. I'm busy riding motorcycles and girlfriends. I'm having the time of my life in the States. I'm not, interested in this. But, we had some conversations, and there was a moment in which he was like, come on, let's just give it a try. What do you lose? And you're going to go back to the States and do whatever you want. So I walked into a meditation center, and the experience that I had in my first meditation sit, and those two questions I was saying that they're deliberating around, who am I and what am I here to do? I said, every person in the world should be exposed to these two questions. Everybody should be asking, and yet nobody, no corporate, no community, no college, no university, nobody's asking us to sit with these questions. And I said, there's something to it. And so when I came back to the US from that vacation, I started a club on campus at my university, just a meditation club. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to find a tribe of people who, when you do such weird things, by the way, when you're young and you're in college, you lose friends like they start dropping like flies. This guy's a weirdo. He's asking, he's doing all these, weird things of, sitting under a tree and trying to reach enlightenment or whatever. So you lose friends, and then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to still. I had certain personal experience, like I had a conviction that there's something to it, but I'm going to try. So I started a club on campus, and so the club became more and more popular. I graduated, got hired by a company in that same city, but we're talking Austin, Texas. And then, so now I'm done with the university. So the club is now meeting at my place, and I just keep the doors open, say, I meditate. If you want to meditate, come join me. And so my home became a meeting place, if you will. And then slowly, as I had guest speakers come in, they would come and they would bless me. And, they were just being in the company of these learned, wise people. I'm like, if I think that this is valuable, then I need to go all the way. I need to dive in with my head first, because that's the only way I'm going to find out. Otherwise, so I just keep dabbling on the surface and, waddling in the waves. You're never going to know, right? So I said, okay, I'm going to dive in. And that's what happened. And the opportunity came for me to move from Austin to San Francisco because of my work, and also have family here. And I said, I'm going to move right into an ashram, which is like a monastery. And I said, there's no point. I mean, I don't see any reason why I should be cleaning for myself and furnishing an apartment. Rather, I would go and contribute towards cleaning a center where 100 people come in that week and benefit from it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I wanted to I wanted every bit of my energy to go towards helping or serving, where
Mm. Yeah.
I'm doing not things for myself, but I'm doing things for the greater good. And so I moved into an ashram, which is a monastery, and lived there. So total 18 years.
Wow. Of dedication, huh?
Yeah, but I mean,
18.
it was dedication as now when I look back, but like I said, it's one step in front of the other. It's not like I had a grand plan and I didn't know if I was going to live this long. And, so funny that I say that. I didn't know if when I went in that I was going to live this long in the center. But I also, latter part of it, I didn't know if I will ever get out of it, because I liked that. It was such a comfortable place. It was like, you have a positive environment, you have positive people, you have silence all the time in a world that is constantly noisy and busy and trying to distract you in every which way. That was such a beautiful sanctuary. So I thought I'll just live there till the end of my time. But again, when the universe has a voice and it has a plan for you, it's greater than anything that you could have planned.
Right.
So you left the ashram. What was that, intentional, or what was the?
Yeah. So the process, I'll explain again. The way that it played out was every year when I was in the ashram, and even after I came out, I used to do that. It's interesting. We're talking in the 2nd of January. So from the 31st of December until the 14th of January, for about 15 days, 2 weeks, I would go into silence. It would be my personal retreat. I would not go anywhere. I already live in an ashram, so that helps. So I'd go into silence and I'd really try to take stock of what have I learned the previous year? What are the big lessons? What do I want to leave behind? And what does the universe, call it God, call it divine, call it great spirit, whatever name you want, what does the divine want to do through me this year? Okay. And I would sit with that and I would get some sort of a download. And so that year, 2018, the download was, you're going to move away from here and you're going to create your own movement. And I had no idea what that would be. Because when you're part of a ashram that has, 9,000 centers around the world, and I used to travel quite a bit and teach on behalf of the Brahma Kumaris, by the way, which is the name of the ashram. It was a very comfortable setup. I was known, I was taken care of. Like I said, I could have, to the last day of my life, I could have spent there. I was set. But there was this epiphany, 2018 January, that I was going to move away. I had no idea what that is, but it took a while. When that epiphany arrived in January, it took me until September to figure out and actually get that kick on my back to actually get out of that and go live this life that I was meant to live. And so in September of 2018, I left that place after 18 years and started a journey again from clean slate.
Wow, that's amazing. Any fear involved during that process? Was there anything like any hesitation? What would that look like at that time to leave this?
That's a great question, Paul. As I sit back and reflect at that time, that day, I can't remember. I think it was the 7th of September, 2018, is when I walked away from an ashram that I had been so. My identity was almost kind of dissolved with the identity of the ashram. I didn't have my own separate individual presence. It was like I was a member of this and everybody saw me and knew me as that. And didn't really, who I am and what I wanted didn't really matter, because it's about the objectives of the higher purpose of the mission, if you will. So when you go from that to what I'm doing today and living, have my own practice and my own teaching and my own brand, if you will, it seems daunting. I can understand the basis of your question, but at that moment, it was like pulling hair out of butter. We have that saying in India, pulling hair out of butter. It's like smooth, nothing.
Wow.
Because I had sat with that. Remember, it is not like something that just came to me like all of a sudden. I had that told to me. Use your own metaphor for what that is. I had that I knew this was coming, but when it literally come to walking out of the door, honestly, at that moment, I knew this was what I was supposed to be doing. Now, what I would be doing next, there's no clue at that point. It's not like, I had things like, my ducks lined up.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
You walk out and then you figure out, because until the last day, I was doing what I was supposed to be doing as a monk in that particular monastery.
Wow.
That's right. This is when you started running some of your own meditation retreats. This is how I came to find, and I don't know how I came to find. I think I was on your, Jay, you had like a WhatsApp group for years where you would send out inspirational, motivational quotes. And I'm not one to like very much interact with those things. Like I never wrote back. But there were years when I was like probably 2 years when I was working in the hospital, and the universe was whispering and then yelling at me like, this isn't your purpose, this isn't your calling. Where sometimes like that was the thing to get me through or get me in the morning. I would read there was actually a couple of people I was sharing them with who are also working in the hospital. I would read it and I would copy it into another message and forward it to one of my colleagues every day. Right. Anyway, as you were saying your story, I said, this is what I've learned from your experience, and also what I've learned from myself through your teachings is how to listen to my own inner voice, my own intuition, how to leave something where there's this sort of comfort, but also this predictable path. I think, Po, what you're getting at is like, in one world, like you kind of know, Jay, you knew what your life as an engineer would look like. You said, I can see in 20 years, I'll be this director and all the sort of comforts that come with it, but also how it keeps you from your true calling, how that is a sort of misery almost. I started feeling that, and you feel that a little bit, and if you ignore it then it manifests, I think, in other ways in your life. So that is just to say that you have been like profound. Like this podcast exists because I said, this is what I want to do in this world, and the universe heard me, and then Po came into my life so that we could share this with so many more people. So,
I mean, what I feel like is, I didn't have a real good introduction to meditation, so I pretty much grew up in like a Christian family background. So meditation was like, I interpreted it as like a prayer later in life, right? But when I was open to actual the practices, like I said, I don't claim to know a whole lot about it, which is why I wanted to ask, for someone who doesn't know anything about meditation, and I'm right there. I consider myself a beginner, at meditation, but when I am in deep meditated state, it is hard to describe and put into words when you're really in the meditation and you're really, like doing the breathing exercises and, because I tried in the past and it was never really successful at it because I think my mind was too cluttered, which sometimes I struggle with now. But when I'm in that state of complete, like letting the thoughts pass through my mind versus holding them up and thinking about it and kind of, so walk us through, like, I just want to know what that's like. How would you describe to someone who's never meditated before, and how would one, like, be open to, how would you suggest someone be open to trying meditation for the first time?
Yeah. So I'll start with an analogy. So why do you need to meditate? We are bombarded with stimulation. We live at a time where, on an average, a human being has a billion different sensory signals being sent to the brain. So this, what I'm seeing, what I'm smelling, what I'm hearing, what I'm tasting, what I'm touching, what is touching my skin, the temperature of the air, all of that. The human brain is capable of processing 11 bits of that information per second. Okay, so think about the thing that as we are getting busier, as we're getting more and more stimulated, right? Those times, just even in our lifetime, you look at the trajectory of how we would have those quiet moments when we were going for a walk, or we were sitting on the toilet or whatever, right? And now there's technology competing for those little crevices of space. That was your time, your quiet time. We work harder, we work longer, we sleep less. Just think about that. That means we're putting more strain and stress on the body and the brain, but we are burning ourselves from both ends by not sleeping. Why? Why are we not able to sleep? Because our mind is so ratcheted, it's so revved up that it takes us a while before we can actually get to that state which is referred to as theta or delta state sleep. And so you're stimulating yourself, you're sleeping less, burning the candles at both ends, and then you're wondering why there's a exploding mental health crisis in this country or around the world. I mean, there's enough statistics out there. I don't need to keep, reiterate those things. So what can I do? Is I need to take control of my life. When you buy that iPhone, when you buy that iPad, when you buy that Xbox, they don't come with a red manual that says, this is how it's going to change your life, right? So we bring these technologies into our home, into our bedrooms, into our laps, palms, whatever, into our beds. But do you realize that these things are affecting the future of your life and your future generations? Because you do it, the kids are going to watch you and do it. If you don't put any sort of boundaries around it, guess what? They're going to grow up in this and they don't know a world different. Which, by the way, I have to say something. This is a very, very critical time we live in history. We are the only generation in all of history that knows life before the internet and after the internet. The advent of internet, you know what I mean? The advent of internet. We're the only generation. We'll be the last ones. After this, all these kids are coming. Your kids, my kids, grandkids, will all be born in the internet world. So they don't even know of a world, what happened before that, how people did things, how people picked up people at airports, how people found addresses when they were trying to get somewhere. Right?
Stop at the gas station.
Here's the important thing, right? If that statistic woke you up, then listen to this. Then it becomes absolutely imperative for us to create that boundary around the technology, around whatever that lifestyle that is driven by these myriads of apps and all this technology that is completely running over. It's bulldozing our life. It's not going to go anywhere, regardless of whether you like it or don't like it. It is here to stay. Are we putting some sort of rules around how do we engage with this technology, right? So that's the case for why meditation. I say meditation that the Buddha talked about 2,500 years ago was for today. It was way more peaceful back then when he lived. So here's the thing. So think about, so now let's talk about the analogy. I'll tell you a story. We talk about Buddha. I'll tell you a story of the Buddha's life. So one day he was taking his entourage. They were on a pilgrimage and they were going through the forest. And then they're taking a break. They're tired. They've been walking for days. They're tired. And so they decide to stop under a tree. And the Buddha decides to rest. And he tells one of his disciples, go fetch me some water from the river. So this young disciple, full of energy, shoots off and he goes to the river. And as he takes his pail, he notices a bullock cart has just passed the river. And so the bullock cart has ruffled up, the wheels have ruffled up the water, the dirt. And so the water is dirty. He can't bring that to the Buddha. So he comes back and he tells the Buddha that the water is dirty, so I didn't bring it. The Buddha says, okay, so sit down. So about 20 minutes later, he tells him, Go back to the river and fetch me some water. And so the young disciple, full enthusiasm, goes to the river, then looks and he sees that it's still dirty, still murky, because the dirt has been ruffled. He comes back and he says this to the Buddha. I can't bring you, you can't be drinking that water. Okay, sit down for another 20 minutes. And it sends him back again. At this time, this guy, the young fellow, is a little bit agitated. Like, what is this thing? I mean, doesn't he get the idea that the water is not drinkable? But he can't say no to his teacher. So he just says, okay, he obliges and he goes. And when he goes to the river this time, he notices the water is clear, fetches a pail of water and gives it to the Buddha. And therein, the master taught the student a huge lesson in life. When you feel that you're in complete turmoil, when you feel like there's a hurricane in your life right now, what you need to do, all you need to do is sit. Sit and it shall settle. Sit and you will become clear. And then what happens when you get clarity is that thing, that opportunities, that thing, that situation, that answer that is right in front of you all the time, the whole time. You get to see it with your own eyes. So I'm not talking about some great thing that, there's a lightning flash in the clouds and you get this, new piece of wisdom. No, I'm talking about what is obvious for you to do, the choice that you need to make, that opportunity that exists becomes apparent to you because now your eyes are no longer clouded by that turmoil. So that's what meditation does for you. That's why it's so important to meditate. And you have to do it every day.
Jay, I think a lot of people struggle with that, with the consistency, especially when they're getting started. Like they've heard, maybe they've even experienced. Po, you've experienced the benefits of regular meditation, and you talk about this. Even I've gotten away from time to time. I get away from my practice, and can you talk about that? Like how to think about that and sort of how to be more consistent in your practice?
Right. So the mantra that I have for myself, and this is just what works for me, and I've recommended to tens of thousands of students around the world, is this mantra called RPM. RPM, rise, P, meditate. First things first. Because I tell you, once that turmoil, once that hurricane lands in your house, which is usually when you open up your phone, check your messages, or the kids wake up, they've entered into your bedroom, whatever that is, the hurricane's already in. The cloud is already up. It's very, very hard at that point to fight that momentum and say, now I'm going to sit and meditate in the middle of the day or some other time. Right? So first things first, just make that, and I say 21 days. Try for 21 days. In fact, I have a 21-day challenge for the new year that's in flight right now.
That's right.
Right?
And people can start anytime, right? Because they're pre-recorded videos.
Yeah, so they're pre-recorded videos. I started that on the 30th. I did 2 episodes of winding down the previous year, taking stock.
That's right.
And then 19 episodes of the new year, setting yourself up for a successful, calm, and productive new year.
That's joywithjay.com. We'll put the link in the show notes.
Thank you. So when you do this, well, I'll handhold you, right? And I highly recommend, whether it's me or some other teacher that you like, find somebody who can guide you. And when you do that, you build a natural inclination. It's morning, first thing I wake up. I don't want to hit the ground running. I want to first create my sense of intentions. What is my focus? What do I want to get out of today? What is my vision for today? So meditation helps you do that. Clarity. It helps you put your priorities, reprioritize in the midst of all this other stuff that, everybody's trying to compete and everybody's trying to tell you what you need to be doing. No. What is my true priorities? Right? And then you go out and act, and you come from a place of the coolness, the calmness. When we began this, Paul was saying that how he already feels that my voice isn't just listening to me, but I didn't do any meditation. He just heard my voice.
Right.
It's because your brain changes when you practice like this, right? There's actual evidence to show that the physical changes to your brain structure, that when you are hit with some sort of a very devastating news, or when some sort of a crisis, or when there is a loss, or when there is, you get laid off at work, or whatever that revelation that is earth shattering for some people, where you come here from a place of cool collective response. So there's a difference, responding versus reacting. And that comes just like going to the gym. You can't go lift heavy luggage if you haven't built the muscles before that situation occurred, right? You can't go there and say, today I need to lift something, so I need to go to work out in the gym. That's useless. You need to have prepared for yourself such you can lift weight in your life. So this is the same thing. And as we see, life is becoming more and more demanding, and there's more and more pressures, and this news, and all of especially the pandemic was huge heavy lifting for most people, families, jobs, kids, stuck at home, no social engagements, no birthday parties, no weddings to attend. We did Christmas over Zoom. I mean, these were structures that are set up for thousands of years, that we relied on these structures to bring sanity into our lives. And suddenly the world is getting more chaotic, and then you're locked in for 2 years. Right?
Yeah.
So hopefully this is the nature's way. It's a wake-up call for us to say, we need to make our mental health a priority. This is not something that you can delay anymore.
Right. Now, I know there's different types of meditation, right? There's different methods of meditating. I mean, I just heard off the top of my, I remember years ago, it was like transcendental meditation. Like what, if you're someone who's new, what kind of advice would you give? Like for me, if I wanted to get into, obviously I am, partaking in the, your 21-day meditation, but like someone who's never done it before, like how would you suggest someone start? What kind of advice would you give to start in meditation?
Right. So the very first thing is to try it, right? You got to dabble with it. There are apps, there are YouTube videos. I have both of those things. If you want to just watch a video with the visuals, or if you want to, lie down, keep your eyes closed, and put on your AirPods or earplugs and just listen to something. There's that. So one of those two. So guidance I think, is a very good thing, especially when you're beginning, because the eventual goal is that you're free of any of these. I call these supporting, like training wheels for your bicycle, right? Eventually you're going to ride the bicycle free on your own, but you need training wheels. So these guidance, finding a quiet space, finding a calm atmosphere, closing your eyes, these are all tools. You should be able to, once you get to the point where you're self-sufficient, you could be sitting in an airplane with 300 other people, and the pilot has just announced that the flight is going to be delayed on the tarmac, doors closed for the next 1 hour. Everybody's kicking and screaming, and you can be completely chill about that. Eyes wide open, right? But before you get there, you need these training wheels. So I highly recommend that you pick up some sort of either a guided meditation on audio or video or a book, and then try to follow that. And to your point, there are so many different kinds of meditation. So yes, I ask that you please try a few before you land on yours. It's like food or clothing or anything, colors, right? You may like blue, and I love orange. Yeah, right. So it's not a one size fits all. And we could be born in the same family, grew up in the same culture, and we've seen how people pick their own paths. Right. So I'd say that please find that for yourself, whatever that is. And there's plenty of free resources. So it's not even like a big lift in terms of an investment. Right? So
there's something I like about your current, I mean, a lot of your meditations are not just a sort of check-in with your body and a recognition of your thoughts. That those skills and practicing that, I think, is really important. But then you also bring this intention about thinking about yourself and your life in a different way. And doing that in the space that you create, there's something very powerful about that, I think.
Well, thank you. Thank you for telling me that it seems to have spoken to you, it seems to have resonated with you. And I believe
That's
that
right.
finding the resonance with your style is first big step. So, Paul, you were asking earlier about consistency. I don't know if it's Rak or Po, but I
Yeah,
think the point is this: once you enjoy something, whatever that
that's right.
channel is, that voice, that style, then it's no longer feels like you're, having to kick and scream through this thing every day. You wake up and like, oh my
Health
God, I got to do
feast.
this yet again, right? It's not like that, but you actually enjoy it. And it's only, we're talking about 10 minutes, 12 minutes, right? And then
Okay,
before you
I'm
know it,
smiling, Jay. I'm smiling because that is why we named the show Health Feast,
right?
because so many times healthy behaviors, things that are good for us, they get framed as punishments.
Mhm.
And actually, in practice, and I don't think people punish themselves with meditation, but exercise or diet are great examples where people use those as ways to restrict themselves or punish themselves. And what you're saying is what we come back to all the time, which is if you enjoy what you're doing, then you won't have to force yourself
Mhm.
to do it. Your body, you're going to wake up and your body's going to be like, when am I, I'm ready to do that thing that
Right.
makes me feel so good.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll add one more thing to that. Finding company, finding a group, finding a pod is huge. Any of those things you talked about, Rak, whether it's health, whether it's diet, whether it's exercise, whether it's meditation,
That's right.
reading, journaling, pick your flavor, whatever it is, creativity. Find a pod. Find a pod that's in it for the right reasons, in it with you. They're also trying to, kind of make this a habit, or even if it's just going to be for a month or whatever it is. That circle of people is so important, because many times we find people around us are, like I said, when I was in college, losing friends, like people looking at me like all weird, family doesn't understand what the heck I'm doing. So not only is your body trying to adapt to this new practice and this new habit, but you've got all these naysayers around you, right? And so I have this quote that I often say in my talks: you are an average of the company you keep. I'll say it one more time. You are an average of the company you keep. So ask yourself, who is your company? Who are you surrounding yourself with? And I'm talking about anything. This is success in life, success in finance, success in sport. Surround yourself with like minded people, and you will notice you will have good days where you're super motivated, you'll have bad days. But that's when your crowd picks you up, pushes you across the finish line.
Wow. Thank you for that. Because I find that, I'm a complete believer of that notion that, you really have to be around people that are trying to improve themselves. And I feel like with this health feast, like I want to be around people that are, constantly trying to improve. And they use it a lot nowadays. You hear it a lot more, the best version of themselves, but it's almost like the higher you, that, and what I was going to ask was, what has, if we're feasting on health, what has meditation done for you in your life? Could you talk about that? Because I feel like that's something that's, for me, I only got a taste of it. I'm still learning about it. And I'm so grateful to have you on here today, so I can sort of ask you these questions. And just your life story in general is just very powerful and inspiring. But what would you say that meditation has done for you?
All right. Okay. So this is going to be very funny, but lately, because of COVID, what's happening is a lot of times that what used to be reunions in person, we started doing reunions on Zoom.
Mm.
And I have classmates who I grew up with, went to high school with, who look at me and say, Jay, why are you the only one in our group who looks 10 years younger than the rest of our class? And I'm like, I said, guys, I mean, I live like a monk, and if it doesn't show up on my face and on my skin and in my in
Right,
how I
right.
react and respond to things, then that means it's not working. So what you see is a proof that what I'm practicing does work. So there's your answer.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
Jay, I want you to talk a little bit about your you said you're planning a new pivot or a new phase in your life and your career. I'm so curious to hear more about that.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned to you, that I have these times when I just go into silence and I look for guidance from source as to what is that next, what am I going to show up as in the next year. And in this particular case, it was actually not silence at home. I used to call that the Cathedral of Silence, where I told you about the 15 days I would sit, just quiet and just meditate every day. This time actually was driving through the Sahara Desert in Egypt. I was in Africa 2 months ago. And by myself, hours and hours of driving through this land where there was nobody. I would not see a car for 30 minutes. And in fact, by chance, there'd be one vehicle that passes me. So I was using that time. I used that as meditation. I was trying to, basically, it was a journey, not about seeing Egypt and that too, but it was really about a journey about into my soul and asking myself, what is it that, I looked at my gifts. So my friends tell me that I have 3 superpowers. My 3 superpowers are, as Bo immediately picked up, is my voice. It's my ability to heal and ability to build community. So these are my 3 superpowers. So I put that as the backdrop of this inquiry and said, how do I want to show up in 2023 and forward? I really was I felt like I was ready for the next challenge, because I did 10 years of technology. I did 10 years of my meditation as a practice, as a business. I was ready for the next challenge. Now we come to the end of the 10th year. And it appeared to me that the challenge that I would be excited to work on would be about the housing crisis, A, where I live in the Bay Area, B, across the world in any major metropolis. So what are the challenges? So the things that come to mind, number one, is that we talk about the COVID pandemic, but what people need to really start noticing is that we have a loneliness pandemic that's going to be even worse than the COVID pandemic. The lives that the loneliness pandemic is going to take, and I'm talking about people who have everything. I'm talking about people who are blessed with resources, with opportunity, with money, and all of that. And we live in a highly individualized, highly isolated world. And COVID, of course, put that on steroids and made us go like 20 years ahead when we sat at home for 2 years. And the toll of that on mental, physical health, relationships, etc., is incredible. And you can see some of that around you amongst the people that you're surrounded by. So number one, so what can we do to address the loneliness pandemic? Number two is that when I look at frontline workers, remember that we used to go at 7:00 in the evening and clang pots and pans and be celebrating, clapping, cheering for our frontline workers when COVID started. Remember that? Right?
Yeah.
So we were celebrating our frontline workers for putting their lives on the line, so they were keeping our grocery stores open and our hospitals open and our essential systems running in society, so we could all live, we can continue to be safe. Those frontline workers of society cannot afford to live in the neighborhood where I'm living right now. They work here, but they're priced out. So we're giving lip service to them and saying that, they need to be recognized. But when it comes to actually housing them in our community, there's no place for them. There's just outpriced. They need to live an hour and a half away and drive 3 hours round trip. It was so interesting. I was in the police department in Mountain View the other day, and there are 2 police officers who live in other states. They fly in on 6:00 on Monday morning, and they fly out 7 p.m. on Thursday night because they can't afford to live here, which is ridiculous. You need these pillars that support and hold up our society for a society to be sustainable. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 is when I look at retired people. So what's happening? First of all, let's understand a statistic. People are living longer, People are living healthier longer, which means the moment of that retirement age, when you hit that thing, there's a whole bunch of time, maybe 2x of what our parents and our grandparents had. When you are active, you're energetic, you're capable, but you are retired. You have all this free time. And so what happens the moment people retire? Again, displaced. They have to go live in, a community far away, a place very far from where they have built their community. They have built an ecosystem, right? For 30, 40 years, they probably invested in this community that they were such an integral part of. And the moment they retire, they're outpriced, which makes no sense because, again, these people have experience, they have wisdom, they have culture, they have stories, they have things to share with us and with our little ones.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And again, so I'm not talking about something that is completely new. This is how societies existed through history. So I often refer to this concept. So I ask you guys this one question. The Homo sapien today, the human being, the man, the people that we are, right? Why are we the single most dominant creature on the planet? Are we the fastest? No. Are we the strongest animal in the jungle? No. Are we the biggest animal in the jungle? No.
Mm-hmm.
Then how come we have become the single most powerful creature to the detriment of all other creatures? As we can see, we're losing species left, right, and center. Extinction is rampant. And the answer to that question is because we learn to work as pods, villages, tribes. We learn to work together. That's our greatest strength. We have strength in numbers. Right? So you come from all of human history where we have thrived, and first survived and then thrived because of our ability to work with each other. And suddenly you come to 2020 when already there's a trajectory of individualization. Oh, I don't want to see my neighbors. I don't want to meet my neighbors. I don't even know my neighbors left, right, and front, back. And you're into isolation. So that's all compounded. And then you ask, why is there such a big mental health crisis? Why is there so many sad people walking around with their pockets full of money? Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4. So I live in a place, Mountain View, California, which is where it's a world headquarters of one of the top 3 richest companies in the world, Google. And 10 miles down the street is the richest company in the world, Apple. A few miles up the street is another one of the wealthiest company in the world, Facebook. Right? So I'm surrounded by people who have plenty going for themselves. But the young people, especially when I see the Gen Zers who work at these companies, the millennials, they're not interested in buying the average price, which is $2.5 million house here in Mountain View or Palo Alto. Why? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner is served at work. They work 12 hours a day. Why should they be paying a $10,000 mortgage or $7,000 mortgage when they come just to sleep, and then the weekends they're out skiing in the mountains or out scuba diving or out hiking or with friends walking in the woods? It makes no sense. So they're saying they're not interested in this way the real estate is being done right now. So I put all of this together and say, what can I do to address this? And so the vision that I have is to create something called urban conscious villages. Urban villages where there's a focus on interdependence. There's a focus on sustainability. So we don't need to all have a copy of everything. We should use common facilities, common amenities. Yes, you have your little private space. You have your tiny home where there's a small kitchenette, there's a dining room, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, all of that. But I would like to see people coming together for meals more often, maybe once a week, cooking together more often, cleaning together, doing, envision this as a community that's like a 3/4 of a circle, and at the center of it is like a community garden or a community room with a daycare center where these old people I was talking about who are capable, who love to get up and be able to use their time and this energy to care for the kids whose parents have to get to work and they don't have the time. They don't have, maybe one of them is not feeling well and they're forced to go and have to drop them off at daycare. And at daycare, they're sitting and watching TV. And imagine if they could be sitting and listening to stories from these pillars in our society. Again, nothing new. I'm just going back to how we came, how we evolved, how we thrived on the planet, and how we've suddenly forgotten the game plan. We lost the plot in this whole concept of sophistication and urbanization and progress. We're losing the plot and we're getting sick. So I want to create this community here as a template and to succeed in that. And when the success speaks for itself, replicate this in all major cities around the world. So this is my dream.
Wow. What they're intentional? Just put the name of the communities.
Well, I don't fully know the name. It's a village.
The term you use.
So think of it as an urban village. So it's important that it's urban, that it's right in the heart of all the action. So right where the jobs are. So you having young people, old people. You have people of different colors, people of different sexual orientation and religions. It doesn't matter what your thing is, but the idea here is that we've come here to take care of each other. When we're there, we know our neighbors. When we're there, we celebrate things. We celebrate our differences, which is beautiful. Think about it. I mean, okay, now here's a statistic. When I grew up, the first part of my life, when I grew up in India, everybody up and down my street looked like me. I come to college in America. No more than 10% of the class looks like each other. So there's like 20 different nations represented in the one classroom. To me, it was mind-blowing. I think I got more out of just my classmates than what I got from the professors. Just learning their stories, celebrating, going to Christmas with them. I remember going down to South Texas, living on a ranch with one of my classmates for Thanksgiving. I didn't know that. I didn't celebrate Thanksgiving growing up, but it was like a mind-opening experience doing it authentically with a local family. You see? And then we come to this point today. I live in this apartment building, 500 units. Like I said, the Googlers, the Facebookers, the Apple people, all of these people are here. Nobody talks to anybody. And I'm saying, like, how do we change that thing? Right?
Yeah, it's almost I've had discussions with friends about how this sense of community has been highly challenged. I mean, if not challenged prior to COVID, but it's even more challenged now after COVID. Like the sense that everybody's looking out for each other. And I grew up in the islands as well. I'm Samoan from the Pacific Islands, and villages are still active now. And what you described to me is how they live now. Right. Like everybody, like you said, the pillars, which are the elders of the families, are usually the ones at home looking after the kids while mom and dad are at work or in the plantation, planting the food and bringing all the harvest. So it's almost like here in our culture here in the United States, it's because of the pandemic, it's gotten worse. Like you said, like nobody. And I think that affects your health. I don't think it's not part of our species to be alone. That's I don't think that's something that we thrive on, is being alone. And I after you're talking, I was thinking of all the people that I've encountered in my life that are feeling lonely, and how a community like this, an idea like this would totally benefit us as a society.
Yeah, I just want to say something about this, about island life. I've had a good fortune of traveling to 71 countries. Several of them were islands, because I grew up in South India, warm, tropical. So I always prefer, if I had to pick a country, I'd rather go to a warm place. So as a result of that, I've been to several tropical islands. And I just want to say something, Po, to your point about everybody knowing everybody caring for everybody. It's just like it's such a natural thing. But to me, when it happened, it almost brought tears to my eyes. And I'll tell you a story. So I was in Grenada, which is in the Caribbean, a small island in the Caribbean. And I was, gone there as part of a tour. I was teaching in some islands, and went to this one place as my own little holiday, and somebody had hosted me. And the islands are so small that you can basically drive around in 30 minutes. I mean, they're that small, right? And then I would walk a lot because the weather's perfect, and there's like mango trees and there's guava trees, and you can actually you don't even need to pack a lunch. You can just walk and you can, right? And you can just, if you're tired, you just lie down under a tree, because I mean, the
Tree,
weather, you
yeah.
just need a shade, right? So I would walk around. I would do lots of walking, and then when I walk about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd be heading down the street around some road that I've never been on in my life, and the kids from schools would be walking back home, right? And I'm a total stranger, and I don't even look like them, right? I'm some stranger who's walking thing. But as I crossed the kids, they would greet, "Good afternoon." I'm like, where am I? Kids on my street will not even look up and make eye contact with me here in America. And yet these strangers, somehow they've been taught, they've kept their culture intact, where they are willing to greet and acknowledge. What does that really mean? When they said that, what does it mean to me? That I, as a human being, acknowledge you as a human being, and I'm grateful for that. I see you. That's all they're saying by that greeting. And fast forward here, we have this homelessness crisis, and you look at, you go, so I did some volunteering, and I had friends who do a lot of work with homelessness in San Francisco, and they say, the number one thing that the homeless people ask for, it's not food, it's not money, it's that respect them. Respect that they are also humans, that who happen to have some bad times come upon them. Right? And so talk about the islands. That's the lesson I took away from the islands, and says that we need to teach our kids to be able to be comfortable making eye contact. And if you're not making eye contact, I would say that's a barometer for something happening in your head. Something is not well.
I just want to make one more comment, was that growing up in the islands, I don't remember there ever being homeless in the islands. Someone was always looking out for somebody. Like there was always, even if you decided you didn't want to live in your village, another village would take you in to make sure that you had food to eat, and that you were looked after. Even if, let's say you had some type of someone would always make sure that someone was looking out for that person. And that's, you were speaking to homelessness. Yeah, that's a new, I don't know what to call it. That's a new thing that's going on, where now people are like detaching themselves from from just the humanity of people in general. But we don't have a solution. We're still trying to figure the solution of how to deal with the population of people that are, obviously mental health. There's a bunch of things that are attached to it. But if we can get past that, I feel like there shouldn't be a reason that anybody should be homeless.
Yeah. And my guess is Mother Nature brought COVID, and COVID is relentless, is one example. I'm not saying that's the only thing, but we will be taught to go back to our basics. Learn it the hard way, learn it the easy way. You want to learn it quick, or you want to take your time and be dragged around and be kicking and screaming? It's up to you. But we will be taught. Yeah.
Okay. Jay, any what's one small thing that everyone can start doing to start living a kind of more purposeful life?
Taking the time for yourself. I think there's nothing is more important, and nothing can come before that, where you choose to make yourself a priority. Taking the time to sit in silence, whether you like a guided meditation or just like to reflect on your own, make time for yourself. Because if you don't, life has a way of consuming you without you even knowing it. You'll just be taken down that rabbit hole and be spitted out, and you'll be sitting there in your hospital bed looking up at the ceiling and saying, what was the last 70, 90, 50, 20, whatever that years is. So take time to ask yourself this question: who am I, and why am I here?
Okay.
Thank you, Jay. I appreciate your time here with us. It was very, very powerful discussion and conversation here today.
Oh, absolutely. You've been a powerful person in my life, and I feel really grateful, just so grateful that you would come honor us with your wisdom and your presence. And, we always say, you say this too, the most important things we have are our time and our attention. And so to be giving of that to us and to our listeners, we're very appreciative. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. And I just want to say one last thing. When you sit down, like I said, ask yourself those questions. I want to offer a nugget of wisdom which comes from the Zen tradition on why it is so important for you to take the time. And so, according to this tradition, life comes down to three things: how much you loved, how well you lived, and how gracefully you let go. All of life and all of the complexities comes down to these three things if you get down to it: how much you loved, how well you lived, and how gracefully you learned to let go. So with that, I thank you for your time.
Beautiful.
Great questions. Obviously, you pulled out the wisdom nuggets. I appreciate that.
Until next time.
So much.
Yeah, until
yes,
next
Jay,
time.
we would love to have you on again. I feel like there's so much, so many more wisdom nuggets every time I hear you talk. And it puts me in a meditative state too.
And how can people find you, Jay? How can people find you?
Yeah, so thank you for that. So my website is like a aggregate of I have hundreds of meditations out there, audio, video. I'm on 5 different mobile apps. I have a TED Talk. The best way to find me is through my website, joywithj.com. It should be easy, joywithj.com.
Yeah, and we'll have a link to the website in the show notes. And yes, very much appreciate it. And thank you all for listening. And we'll see you next time, okay?
All right.
Thank you, Jay.
Ciao, guys.